All right, so this is where we left off, and it's going to build off of our first notes. And I introduced a topic there, parallel and perpendicular, because I told you that was something we're going to be using later on. Now, the homework assesses that separately in the handout. I have some questions just on parallel and perpendicular, but this is having you basically merge the two together. Okay, so I have an equation that is parallel to y equals 2x minus 6 through the point negative 1, 2. I've written right below this formula, which is called the what? There's a name for it. It's built into what the formula is. What is in that formula? What is in that formula? What is this x1 and y1?
Coordinate.
Or a, with a p?
Point.
A point. What's n? This is called the point slope formula, right? To use this formula, I need a point and a... I see the point. That will be my x1 and my y1. That's the point, right? Where do I get the slope? They give you the slope when they say it's going to be parallel to this equation. What does parallel mean about the slope? That's perpendicular, right? Parallel, you think parallel, right? So start with this, parallel. So does that mean opposite slopes?
Yeah.
That means the slopes are the... So what is the slope in y equals 2x minus 6? Not the x, just the... So if this is the slope, then parallel means we will use the... So now we have our point and our slope. Does that make sense? So we can start filling it in. Y minus... What's y minus y1? Y minus...
Y1 would be negative 2.
Y minus negative 2 is equal to m. Our m was same, right? X minus. Now, I'm not going to leave it like this. I will take the minus negative and make both of those what? And x plus 1. This would be our answer if our answer just said point slope. If the answer, and there will be in the homework and there in the worksheet where it says, if I want the answer in point slope form, this is what you would type in. What if I wanted the answer in slope intercept form? What's the slope intercept form? Gotta be a little louder than that. It's me mumbling it like it's a big secret. Y equals mx plus b. This is not in y equals mx plus b. In fact, we don't have y by itself, right? And we practiced this skill already, so let's continue that. How would I get that into y equals mx plus b? What would our first step be? This is out of your old notes. There's a D word for this. We distribute that 2, so that y plus 2 is equal to 2x plus 2. Make sure it distributes to both of them, right? And last, basically you're solving for the y, so that y would equal. Now, I tried to, on the Canvas portion, if you put 2x plus 0, I won't mark you wrong on that, but really we just want y equals 2x. Does that make sense? Okay, and if you put like 2x minus 0 on that one, it might mark you wrong. So just depending on the format, there's different things I'm expecting to see, and that's what I put on Canvas. If it marks you wrong and you think that there's a mistake in it, I can't put in all 20 variations, ask me. I can always go back and manually give you points back if you really think that it was legitimate. Have those discussions with me because we need to know. And if it's a good discussion, man, I'm always open to that. Okay? Can I scoot this down? What does perpendicular mean?
Opposite.
More than that. Not just opposite. There were two things, right? Because I see a point, and then perpendicular talks about the slope again, right? What is the slope in this equation? Is that the slope we're going to use? Now, it didn't say parallel, it said perpendicular, right? If you want to miss this, use that slope. It will be wrong. Because perpendicular doesn't mean same slope. It means two things. What did you say? Good. First you said?
Opposite.
And that's good. Really important. If that were negative, then the opposite will be positive. If that were positive, the opposite will be negative. So that's the first element, but that's not enough. Opposite and, you said reciprocal. If you don't like the word reciprocal, all that means is flip it. This is currently negative 2/3. What's the opposite of that? If it's negative, what would reciprocal mean? That is the slope we will use. Opposite and reciprocal. So now I can use y minus, what's y1? The 6 is our y1, is equal to x minus negative 3. If you want to write that as x plus 3, that wouldn't hurt my feelings. That would be our answer in point slope form. So if I said write the answer in point slope form, you're done. Knowing me, I'm going to ask you to put that back into slope intercept form, which means I take that 3/2 and I what? Y minus 6 is equal to 3/2x plus, you should be able to do 3/2 times 3. Welcome back to our very first section, and I told you, right? But this is really a technology problem. If you're not certain about the rules, 3/2 times 3 should give us what as a fraction? Now's a good time to put them in, right?
9/2.
I heard 9/2, that is correct. And last, how would you solve for y? Well, it's already minus 6, so we would. And take that 9/2, using that same technology, and add 6 to it, and you have what? Should be 9 plus 12. What is it? 21/2. And that is the answer in what? What's that form called again? Slope intercept form. And it's not called slope intercept form because we're trying to be mean. Literally, it contains a slope and a y-intercept, right? Be comfortable with all of that. A couple of you are still writing, so I'll give you a second. My heart that chills the room.
Oh my. What a fun person you are.
Yeah.
Oh, this is fun. Oh, this is fun.
See the hardest ones. This is the hardest type of question you're going to see. So please be careful with this. But we'll go through a couple of them. They'll say write an equation through these 2 points. You're like, I was just getting comfortable. If they gave me a point and a slope, I would use point slope, right? Here they gave me a point and a point. We got a problem. If they've given you 2 points, have they given you a point for point slope? Okay. Here's where you got to figure out. If they've given you 2 points, have they given you a slope? Sort of they have. They didn't just say here's the slope, but if they give us 2 points, can we find the slope from those 2 points? See, that's the first step. Take those 2 points and find the slope. How do I find the slope? Change in y over change in x. The difference of the y's, difference of the x. What is the difference of the y's? That would be the y2 minus the y1, right? Over, what's the difference in the x's? -1 minus 2 is what I heard. I'm left with 1 over -3. Please do not leave the slope like that. We don't leave a negative in the denominator. What is our slope? Just -1/3 to be fine, or if you want to put the negative on the top, that is our what? Now we have a point and a, right? Which point The formula says use the y1 and x1. Okay? But keep in mind, this line should go through both of those points, shouldn't it? So it doesn't matter which point you use. You can use the x1 and y1 or the x2 and y2. It doesn't matter which point you use. I'll prove it to you, okay? But if you're confused, your formula says use the first point, then just use the first point. You'll be fine, okay? So if I use the first point, what would it be? Y minus, what's y1? Is equal to, what's the m? X minus, there you go. That is how you would find the equation through those 2 points. What if they ask for the answer in slope-intercept form? Y minus 5 is equal to negative 1/3 x plus 2/3. And last, how do you get that y by itself? Y is equal to negative 1/3 x plus, how about 17/3? Did it matter which point we used? Well, I told you it didn't. You believe me. Let's prove it. Y minus, what if I use the y2? 6 there, right? Is equal to m x minus, what's x minus negative 1? Yeah, just plus 1. Y minus 6 is equal to negative 1/3 x. How about minus 1/3? What would your last step be? So that y is equal to negative 1/3 x, and that would become plus 17/3. Did it change the answer? Remember, it should go through both points, right? If that confuses you, then just use the first point. You'll be fine. But the idea is either point, the line goes through either point, so it will work. Is that fair? Okay. Any questions on that before we continue?
How'd you get 17/3 again?
If I do negative 1/3 plus 6, I give them a common denominator, it'd be negative 1/3 plus 18/3 is 17/3. But I'm not telling you can't use your technology, right? And some of you are typing it in because you don't believe me right now. That's okay. Go ahead. That doesn't hurt my feelings. Okay? Is any other questions from that? Where did I get that 6? This was the second point. This was the y2, just like this was the x2. So I basically did y minus y2 is equal to m x minus x2. Does that help? So that 6 and 1 basically came from up here at the 6 and the 1 on the second point. Does that help? Yes, but if the formula is y minus. Just like the negative 1 was negative, but it became positive when we subtracted it. Okay? Good questions. All right. I don't know why I have this as an example, but apparently I do. There must be a reason. I gave you I guess this is it. If they give you a point and a slope, start with what formula? They're not going to tell you that. They're going to give you a point and a slope, and they're going to say, write the answer in slope-intercept form. And I have somebody that will raise their hand during the test and go, slope-intercept form doesn't have point-slope. And they get all mad at me. I go, that's fine. They gave you a point and a slope. What should you use? Well, they want the answer in slope-intercept form. I understand that. But I can't tell you during the test, right? If they give you a point and a slope, use point. So that would be y minus. What's the y1 this time? A negative 1, right? But what is y minus a negative 1? That's where that changes. Okay? Equals, what's the m? X minus, what's the x1? Any questions on that? Okay. Now, if they want the answer, sorry, I didn't mean to go on. Anyway, give me a second. Got all excited there. There we go. Now, if they ask for the answer in mx plus b, is the answer in that form yet? What do we have to do first? Y plus 1 is equal to negative 2/3. X, how about plus 2/3? And I don't need that parenthesis anymore. Jeez, what's wrong with me today? Sorry about that. Because it distributed. And last step. Confidently, how would you solve for that y? What would you do? Yeah, subtract the 1 away. And now I got y equals negative 2/3 x. How about minus 1/3? Just a couple more examples of this, a couple where I'm going to kick it up a notch. This would be the level of difficulty you could expect on the test.
As the hardest.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some where there's 2 points, but the examples that we've done so far, okay? I want to go through a couple more examples of this that'll be harder, that are more like what's in your homework, okay? But I don't want you to freak out. That's the idea of doing some harder questions, helps these other ones seem easier, okay? All right, so let's keep going. I gave you 2 points. What makes this one so hard? Freaking fractions, right? I hope you got some technology for me. How do you get the slope? I heard y2 minus y1. If they give you 2 points, you have to know, maybe write that on your note card. If they give you 2 points, 2 points, find the slope. It's not this hard on the test. I know this pops up a little bit in the homework. Don't freak out. What goes on top? All right, so I labeled x and y. Which one's my y2? The second one. That's all y2 means. So the first one then would be y, just like this would be x, and this would be x. So when I say y2 minus 1, literally what I'm doing is negative 1/5 minus, what's y1? 4. That's not cool. x2 minus x1. Sorry, that's kind of off the screen. Over negative 1/5 minus, depending on what technology you have, you could type all that in, hit enter, and it would give it to you as a fraction. We probably don't. Most of us have that. Okay, so what do we need to do? Well, start with the top. Can you do negative 1/5 minus 4 on the top? You should be able to do that top part in your calculator. I'm waiting. I know what it is. I'm just waiting for somebody to tell me. All over, what is negative 1/5 minus 1/10? There you go. Over. Now, what I don't like about this is I'm okay with slope being a fraction, but I don't want a fraction over a fraction, right? We've had this before. Some of you can literally type that in your calculator and hit enter, and it'll rewrite that for you. If not, then you have to pick that negative 21 over 5 divided by negative 3 over 10, and we should all be able to put that in our calculator at this point. Now, I know multiply by the reciprocal and all that. What should we end up with? I think it's a positive. Is it 14 over just 14? Ta-da! So should this keep you up at night, like you're going to miss this on the test? No, this is not on the test. Don't freak out about that, okay? Now, how could I write the equation? We've got a slope now, right? How can I write the equation? y minus, what's my y1? Is equal to m times x minus. And that may be your answer if they want it in points or slope, what's that called? Point slope form. And you type that in, hit enter, and then apply, and you're all happy, right? What if they want you to put that back in a slope intercept form? Can you do that? The process doesn't change. Take the 14 and, what's the D word? So y minus 4 is equal to 14x minus, don't leave that as 14 over 10. We need to be past that. Simplify that. 14 over 10 would be, there you go. That's okay. And then last, how do we get that y by itself? So how about 14x plus, is it 13? Is it 13 over something? 13 over 5? Either of these may be your answer depending on the question. So just be careful to read what they're asking for. Because if not, you did a whole bunch of extra work when you weren't needing to. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay. Just like on this activity, there are several where I say write the answer in, and I think I tried to put it on the Canvas instructions also. Point slope form, slope intercept form. Make sure you're putting in the right form. Okay? Because if it asks for the top one and you did all that extra work, first of all, it's going to mark you wrong. But second, don't waste your time doing all that extra work. Okay? Can we keep going? All right, we're almost done. What if they say through this point and parallel to that equation? We have a problem this time, don't we? Because parallel means the same m. And I look at this equation, do you see the m? Is that in y equals mx plus b? So they're going to do this, and I'm not trying to freak you out, but this would be something that could show up. Could you take that equation and find out what the slope is? Basically, could you take that equation and solve for y? How would you do that? Good. If I do it to one side, what's left on the left side is equal to, and last, how would I get that y by itself? What gets divided by -3? And each term is my favorite way of doing it. And so I'm left with y is equal to, what is a negative over a negative? Don't leave that as -4 over -3. Make that. And then the positive divided by negative. That's a horrible y-intercept. Here's the good news. We're not going to use it anyway, are we? We're going to use parallel, which means we're going to use the same. What is the slope now? That's the slope we're going to use for this formula. That was messed up, but that's something that you can expect to see. Okay? Not a lot of them, but just it's a skill. Y minus, what's the y1? So I like that. Minus -1 is +1 is equal to, what's our m? What's our m? X minus if they want the answer in point slope form, you're done. If not, we take the 4/3 and we depending on the question, either of those will be your answers. The skills don't change. Distribute, subtract it away. I can see some of you getting tired right now, but I'm just telling you, these are the hardest questions, okay? This is not, look at what the practice quiz looks like. These are not what all of the test questions are going to look like. Would I ask one of these? Maybe one. Question.
On the last part,
Uh-huh.
23/3, how did you get that when you took away the -1?
Because -1, if I give them a common denominator, would be -3/3. I'm assuming you could do that part in your calculator.
Oh,
And once they get a common denominator, it'll be 3/3, so 23/3. So
Yeah.
yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. Through a point, perpendicular. Are we going to use the same slope? Do we even know the slope of that stupid equation, right? How do we get the slope? Subtract the, so we're getting that into y equals mx plus b. So -2y is equal to -3x plus 8. So that y is equal to a negative over a negative. Positive divided by negative. So our slope now that it's in y equals mx plus b is what? Now it said perpendicular, right? So does that mean I'm using 3/2? Perpendicular doesn't mean same slope. It means opposite. It means if this is positive, then we will use a slope that is, and which would be, that is our m that we will use, perpendicular to that equation. It's a lot to keep track of. It's a lot to fit on a note card. Prioritize. There you go. Y minus. What's y1? Is equal to, what's m? X minus. Minus negative. How about just, that might be your answer. Point slope form, you're done. If they want it in slope intercept, you have to take the 2/3 and add over the, what is that, 11? I heard a couple of you typing that in. Did you get 11/3? Don't believe me, I'm a liar sometimes, so double check me. Okay? Either that or that, depending on what they ask for. Okay? Ready for the easy stuff? Not yet.
Quick question.
Uh-huh. I don't necessarily want to go through all these, but I just wanted to show you a couple examples of types of questions and just say, this yellow part is what I would have on my note card. So if I have a question here, and they've given me through a point with that slope, what formula would you use? I see two good choices there. What is this? What is that 0,3? It's a what? It's a point. What's this n? So what formula might we use? Okay, so point slope formula, so you would do y minus, what's the y? Is equal to m, what's the m? I don't know why there's a little red line there, I'll make that go away. So I heard 1/5. X minus That's a perfectly good choice. I would have done something different, but it's not wrong to use that. You would have to distribute that and add the 3, but you'd be done, right? Not too rough to do. Did anyone notice that 0, 3 is a special point? Yes, sir.
So if they don't mention anything about parallel,
No, it just says using this slope. So it'll say with this slope. So if they say with this slope, they're saying use that slope. If it says parallel to, then that also means it's the same thing as saying same slope. Okay? Nobody noticed anything special about the point 0, 3? This is a y-intercept, where x is 0, y is 3. This is not just any point. This is this has a b of 3. This is rare, so if this confuses you, don't do this. Okay? But that 0, 3 was a y-intercept, which means I not only had a point and a slope, that was the b, that was the y-intercept, and this was the m. So I could have used this top equation and gone y equals, what's m? Plus, what's b? Either of those would have been a good choice. If I had to guess, most of you probably wouldn't have seen to use the top one. That's okay. Use the first one, distribute it, and add the 3. It turns back into that anyway. But be very careful, because this number right here is only the b if that x is 0. So be very careful. I'll see some people do this, and they'll just keep calling that the b. And that's wrong. Like on the next one, 1, 4. Is that 4 the b? No, don't do that. Is that 5 the b? No, neither of those is the b, so don't use that formula then. Okay? What will your strategy be if they give you 2 points? Good, so you're going to start by finding the, which was change in y over change in x, which would be 1 over 2. 5 minus 4 is 1. 3 minus 1 is 2. We got a slope now, right? Once I have that slope, what would I now use? What formula? What's it called? Slope intercept form. So it would be y minus, what's y1? Is equal to, what's m? X minus. I just wanted to show you different types of questions and what is your strategy going to be. Next one, they gave you 2 points. What are you going to do first? Okay, if I go to find the slope, the change in y over change in x, this ends up being 9 minus 5 is 4, 1 minus 1 is 0. We got a problem, don't we? That wasn't a bad idea, but we have a slope that is what? What's the word? Undefined. So you have to remember, that's a vertical line, isn't it? I like that you do that. It's a vertical line. So none of these are going to work then, because all of these are y equals, y equals, y equals. A vertical line with an undefined slope is not y equals. It's what? No. X equals. What does x equal for both of these points? No, what's the x value on both of those points? This is the equation, x equals 1. When you have 2 points and they have the same x, the answer is x equals that number. If they have the same y, it would have been y equals that number. So it's a little bit of a tricky, different version. If you have an undefined slope, you have to know that means x is equal to some number. We use a k for a constant. X is equal to some number. That number happens to be this time 1, because both of the points have an x value of. If both of these were 2, it'd be x equals 2. If both of these were 9, it'd be x equals 9. Okay? That's a tricky thing they'll throw in sometimes. At last, if they give you a point and they say parallel to an equation, but the slope isn't apparent in the equation, what do you have to do first? Basically solve that equation for y so that I can get the slope. And last, how would I solve it for y? So that y is equal to. Now that I have the equation in y equals mx plus b, I take its slope. Do I change it or do I keep it? It said parallel, right? So we're not going to do opposite reciprocal. We're going to keep it. That's what parallel means. Now I have a point and a point and a. So what formula will we use? What is y minus that y? What is y minus negative 3? Is equal to, what's our m? X minus. If they want the answer in point slope form, you're done. If not, you have to distribute. Subtract. And that'd be what, plus 7. So just be careful. But these are all different types of questions. And really, most everything I just used was from that highlighted part. That highlighted part is what I would have on a note card. And then just know which one to use in different situations. Okay? Number 3 is probably more of a trick one. I don't know that that would show up on the test. Like, well, how will I know? Do the practice. If that shows up, worry about it. If not, but either way, what I would expect more often than not would be them giving you that and just asking for the slope or asking you to graph the equation x equals 1. All of that would be fair. Okay? All right. We save the easiest thing for the end now. Ready? Now, there are harder word questions, and I already told you, I'm expecting you to, if you're struggling with those, come see me for help. There's somewhere they gave you like multiple points, but this is something that needs to be gimme points. Because all this is basically saying is, in a real life situation, do you understand what the slope and what the y-intercept means? Okay? So here's a word question. Some of you are copying it down. That doesn't hurt my feeling. That's good. I'm going to talk through it a little bit while you copy it down. Y represents the total cost of publishing a book. X represents the number of copies printed. Suppose that X and Y are related into this equation. Y equals 1,150 plus 25X. Out of these two, which of those is the y-intercept? It's the 1,150, and that's weird because normally that's the number at the end, right? But keep in mind, that's if it's where the B is the y-intercept, right? Problem is they didn't stick it at the end. A lot of times in business, or those of you who are going into stats after this class, we'll put the y-intercept at the beginning. Why? Because it's a starting point. What does the y-intercept mean? If x equals, basically means what? If x is the number of copies that you published, that means what if we published no books? How much do I still pay them? I pay them that 1,150 bucks, right? That's the fee. That's that initial fee just to have them publish my book. If I pay them that fee and then nobody ever orders a book, I still paid them the 1,150. See the issue? So that 1,150 is the y-intercept. It's basically a starting point. And this is why a lot of times in word questions, we put the y-intercept first, because it's a starting point. And then from there, then what's the slope? Well, that's our number that's with the x. So this time this slope. But what does it mean in the context of the question? What's that 25? Cost per book, basically. Okay? So it's basically going to be a rate of change. Wasn't our slope before change in y over change in x? Change in y is cost. Change in y basically means change in cost over change in x basically means change in, what did they say x was? Number of copies. It's basically the cost per copy. It's a change. All right, here's the easy part. Here's the questions. What's the cost to get started? If they want that starting, you need to know that starting point is the y-intercept. If we do nothing, we got to pay $1,150. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There are questions like this on the test. Didn't I tell you they should be gimme points? What I like about this is it helps us understand what y-intercept and slope mean. When we graph, don't we start with the y-intercept? Isn't that our starting point? And then from there we use the slope to find the change over beyond that point. Make sense? So the starting point is the y-intercept. What is the change in the total cost for each book? That rate of change is $25. Was that a tough question? That's it. You're like, why did you make it complicated? Because I'm trying to help you understand what it is. Because once we explain it and we think of it like it, that's a gimme point. Shouldn't that be gimme points on the test? Okay. What I did is, and there are going to be other word questions that are going to be harder than this in your homework, but there's a question like this on your practice quiz. There's a question like this on the test. I didn't put this in our practice worksheet because I felt like 28 questions was already enough. Okay? I put it in the notes. As you do the practice quiz, it'll pop up. The only people that don't get these points are ones that didn't listen to this lecture, didn't do the practice quiz. Otherwise, it should be gimme points. Let's keep going. Another big word question, ending in an equation. Right? Give you a second if you want to copy it down. Some of you are now just using the previous notes trying to think your way through this one. I'm fine with that. Owners of a recreation area are filling a small pond with water. Y represents the total amount of water in liters. X represents the number of minutes the water has been added. Suppose X and Y are related in this equation. Answer the questions below. Is this equation in y equals mx plus b form? Not quite. They've reordered it, right? What you have to remember then is what? What is the y-intercept? That would be an initial or a starting point, right? What is the slope? Which is? That's the number with the x. Always. That's kind of convenient, right? So even if they reorder it, let me be clear, I don't want your equations written in this form. We do mx plus b. So any of the questions I ask you to write the answer in slope-intercept form, I want that 26x first. If you come take stats with me next semester, we will be writing equations with the 400 first. Different style. Sorry. Okay? 2 questions. What is the change per minute in the amount of water in the pond? Which of those 2 numbers represent the change? I taught you slope well, right? Little Padawan, like it's a, what is that? Star Wars reference, right? Little Padawan. There you go. Slope is change, 26 liters. That's our change, right? What's the starting amount? We got 400 liters in there at the beginning. Freaking gimme points, right? Stop and think about what they are and what they mean. That's why I like these word questions. We're not just doing equations, we're stopping and thinking about what they mean. And that's valuable because those of you who are going in stats, we do linear equations. We do linear regression. And we have to stop and think about what those equations mean. Fair enough? Can I keep going?
Oh, I have this. Oh, this is the one we did yesterday. It is this one.
Right. They give you this nice picture. They gave you 26 minutes, call is 2110, 54 minutes is 6090. What's the credit after 57 minutes of calls? What you have to do is this. First of all, we're going to write an equation, y equals mx plus b. Not going to get there first, but you have to know what is our x. Look at the picture. What's on the x-axis? Calling time is our x, isn't it? What's on the y-axis? That's our y. So when they tell me the remaining credit after 26 minutes of calls, that 26 minutes is an x. That remaining balance is, they've just given you a point. 26, comma, 2110. X, comma, y. You see how that worked? Right after that it says, after 54 minutes, what's 54 minutes? In fact, we could call that one x2 if you wanted to. This would, now we have 2 points, right? x2 is going to be, and what's the remaining balance? That would be our y2. So they gave you 2 points, they just didn't call them 2 points. You have to figure out, one is x, one is y, write the 2 points. We just reviewed, what do I do when they give me 2 points? I can't go straight to that. 2 points, find the slope. I think I even wrote that out. If they ever give you 2 points, the only thing we can do from 2 points is find the, which is the change in the y's over the change in the, do you see the y's? What's the change in those y's? Over, what's the change in the x? Minus. Now these probably aren't going to be super pretty, but we can handle that. What does that end up being? Negative 420? Oh, just got somebody excited. Over. Is it 28? Yes? All right. I am not leaving the slope like that. If anything, probably turn that into a decimal. I hope it comes out nice. Does it? What's 4.2? What is it? There you go. That's our slope. That's basically our fee. We are charging 15 cents per, that's the change then. See how this works? So do we have an equation yet? Unfortunately not. But I do have a point and I have a, so if I have a point and a slope, what do you think we'll use? Pick a y1. Probably the first one, so y minus is equal to, what's our m? X minus y minus 2110 is equal to negative 0.15 x plus, I need your help, what is 26 times 0.15? What is it? 3.9? And it ends up becoming positive because the negative times the negative. But yeah, is that okay? And then last, we're going to add the y is equal to plus, is that 25? We got an equation. Did we answer the question? Did they say write the equation and you're done? Freaking A, what do I have to do now? What's the remaining credit after, what is that 57 minutes? Look at the picture. What's 57 minutes? They gave me another x at the end. I now have an equation and I have an x. Can you solve for y? Take that 57 and plug it in for x. So what is, and you literally can do all that in your calculator. What is negative 0.15 times 57 plus 25? 16.45. And that's the y, which is the remaining credit after 57 minutes. Told you that was going to be the hardest thing we do is when they give us 2 points. Now we just added words to it. One more. One more. I wanted to do 2 of these just because I know this is the thing that's going to give you nightmares. You're welcome. Let's start deconstructing this. We don't need to copy the whole thing down. What do we start by figuring out? What's our x? Good, look at the picture. What's our x? See, that tells me that 18 gallons of fuel, that is an x, isn't it? What's the y? Right? Read it. Airplane. So that weight, 2,017 pounds, is that's a point. 18 comma. Then what do they give me? Another weight, another x, gives me another 48 comma. What do we do if they give me 2 slopes? I just gave away the answer. What do I do? What do we do if they give me 2 points? Thank you. Changing y over changing x. This is what happens when you think about the answer when you're asking a question. Changing the y's. What is 2212 minus 2017? Somebody tell me, what is that, 205? Is it? See, I'm a dang liar. That's why you got to keep me. 195? Over 48 minus 18, I heard 30. That's going to be a decimal, isn't it? 6 point. Thank you. That's our. Good. Do we have an equation now? Unfortunately not. We got to write the equation. Y minus, pick a point. 18, 20, 17. What do I put right here with the y? Y minus the y. 2017 is equal to, what's the m? X minus. I need your help. What is 6.5 times 18? Negative, I got 117 even. Plus 2017. So how about, well, I lost my x. Some of you, I got mad about that earlier. Is that 1900? And then that's 64. At the end is a, plug it into the equation. Y equals 6.5 times 64 plus 1900. How much does this sucker weigh? A lot. That's helpful. Thanks. Oh, wait, this is our last thing we're doing. How much does it weigh? 2,316? Okay. You now know what's on the next test. Okay.